Greetings, viewers. Welcome to once again another edition of the True Patriot Podcast on this Wednesday, the 8th of October 2025. We are here to discuss an important issue, what has been called the change politics, the popular narrative that has dominated our political arena. It is a common narrative globally. People want to be an alternative, they push the change narrative. But today we want to get deeper into the conversation about change in Zimbabwe. What does change really look like? And what can you do today to achieve that change? Can it be achieved today or it has to wait for another? But this conversation is inspired by an article written by Comrade Gerald Tawengwa, who we invited today to try to get an understanding of his change perspective. We also have Comrade Tatenda Moberara, whom is also a socio-economic justice activist who is on the ground trying to organize communities on different causes. We also want to hear his perspective with regards to this change narrative. Now, welcome, Comrade Gerald. Can you greet our viewers? You are on mute, Comrade Gerald.
Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Comrade.
You are on mute, Comrade Gerald. We can't hear
you. Oh, sorry. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Oh, so thank you very much, Comrade Robert. Greetings, viewers.
Comrade Tatenda, if you could also greet our viewers.
Greetings, Comrade Robert. Greetings, viewers.
Thank you so much, comrades, for agreeing to be part of this important conversation. And we begin with you, Comrade Gerald Tawengwa. We want to hear from you this article that you wrote on where you want to deconstruct the change narrative in Zimbabwe. What is it all about?
Okay, thank you very much, Comrade Robert. So I think for more than a century, we have been oppressed, starting from when we were colonized in 1890. But then, as we moved, our comrades, those who fought for the liberation, at some point they were hijacked and they went into the boots of the oppressor, which is the white man, and they became what they were fighting for. So fast forward, then we started fighting for the liberation of our people, and there came a word which many describe as change. So people started talking about change in the streets, change, and I remember in the early 90s when I was still in the primary, I was very interested in that topic because I would assume that a lot was going to change, especially in the pockets of an ordinary person, of the peasant, or of someone who lives in the rural areas, of someone who is not employed. But then, as I was growing up, I started realizing that change is just but an illusion. The change that we're aspiring for was not for everyone, but was for those who were connected either through the ruling elites and maybe even in the opposition arena. So the change that was now happening was a change of people getting power, maybe going to parliament, going to council, and getting a pex there. And if you look at the ordinary person now, nothing changed in terms of his or a pocket. So then that's now started to manifest in a lot of things. As we can see that the change that we have been aspiring for, we now have to wait for an election for people to tell us about change. It's now the change at rallies. It's not change for people's livelihood. So this inspired me to write about this article.
Thank you so much, Comrade Gerald, for really giving us your perspective on this question. Now, Comrade Tatenda, I guess you have also taken time to read this particular article. What will be your general comments to the ideas put forward by Comrade Taven?
Thank you very much, Comrade Gerald. You characterized well the crisis we have in Zimbabwe, taking us down history from the colonial times. So the first point I would want to cement is it is correct to characterize the crisis as a class issue. You cannot escape Marxist lenses when we are looking at the crisis in Zimbabwe. A few decades ago, the people who were fighting against colonialism, the ordinary people were battling with issues to do with taxation, were battling with issues to do with social amenities, were battling with issues of democracy. So if you look at present day Zimbabwe, these things remain at the core of the people's struggles. So what has changed is people sometimes put it with the color of change. So when you characterize the current challenges Zimbabweans are facing with outside class lenses, you will miss the point. So Comrade Gerald, you actually nailed it to say what Zimbabwe has been aspiring for decades was a better Zimbabwe for all, a better Zimbabwe that guarantees everyone the right to life and the means to sustain that life. That means nobody has to struggle to find water, nobody has to struggle to find food or the things which are necessary to make life livable. In today's Zimbabwe, people are still denied these issues. So you look at the structure of oppression and you realize the limitations of the parliamentary route to change. I would want to agree with you that the change which we seek is democratic change in the area of politics, democratic change in the area of economics, democratic change socially. So the parliamentary route has proven to be limited. The same interests, the same class interests, which have been the yoke on the people, still control the politics and the political route through elections. So at the end of the day, people will have different personalities in political office, but still denying them the very basics of life which they need. So when we are talking of change, yes, I concur with you, Comrade Gerald. We cannot solely rely on the parliamentary route to change. We agree on the change we want, and we agree on the agents of that change, which is us, the people. I would say for now, Comrade Obed, these are just my reflections on the article by Comrade Gerald.
You bring a very interesting perspective, and I want to hold you to that a bit. You bring the class question to this struggle for change. Now, in our context, we have seen those who have property leading those who do not have property in a struggle for change. Is it possible to have a group led by those of the ruling elites, of course, the property of class, leading the dispossessed who have nothing into change, on a change agenda? Can substantive change be realized? Because someone is not led, a piece of land, but they're being led in a struggle for change by someone who owns all the land. What's your view?
All right. I would want to just give an example of my days in the International Socialist Organization. By then, the policy was if you are going to be a workers' leader, you can't be leading when you are holding a managerial position because of the obvious conflict of interests. When you are a manager, you obviously represent the interest of capital and the owners of factories, not the interests of workers. So it's a contradiction which cannot happen. So we are saying all property, according to Marx, is theft. Theft in the sense that wealth is accumulated through exploitation under a capitalist system of economics. So when you are talking of a class struggle, which is a good summation of what we are talking about, the majority of people not having access to the basics of life, the majority of people struggling under the yoke, be it legislative yoke or economic yoke, and they are not realizing those aspirations because of the structural rigidities of a society which is run according to a system they do not like. So under such a system, when you are talking of change, which is going to reverse or overturn that system to bring about a system that guarantees that the majority of people are able to eat, the majority of people are able to send their children to school, you get a living wage. You are obviously fighting against the economic interests of an elite, a ruling class that would want to sustain a system where only themselves will eat the cream of this land. So if you are going to have people whose material conditions are in sync with the ruling class or they are part of the ruling class, there is no way they will be self-defeating and bring about a change that reverses the very gains which they do not have. So in short, I would say, Comrade Masaraure, it's a tragedy that in Africa, that in Zimbabwe, we have the vehicles of change which have been in existence being led by the same people whose class has been oppressing the people, purporting to bring about change which will attack their own living conditions. It's not conceivable. It's not something which is not realistic. So it's not possible that we can have change agents or change leaders coming or from the very class which is oppressing us. So we cannot have movements, we cannot have political parties, we cannot have systems which seeks to bring the democratic change and the pro-poor, pro-people aspirations we want being led by people who belong to a different class. It has to come from the oppressed themselves. They say he who is wearing a shoe knows where it pinches the most. So for me to be able to lead workers effectively, I need to understand through lived experience the material conditions of exploitation. That is the only way I can champion a cause for workers to overthrow that same system. We can broaden it and put it in any context of our society. You cannot be leading people whose pain, whose aspirations, whose visions, whose dreams you cannot be part of. It's not possible.
Comrade Gerald, thank you so much, Comrade Tatenda. Comrade Gerald, you then spoke to the issue of how those who get into office using the change campaign get themselves consumed by the office. What is your general comment with the current legislature, the current local authority leaders? Of course, most of them focusing on those who came through the change narrative. What's your general assessment of their performance?
Okay, thank you very much, Comrade Robert. But I think I needed to add something to what Comrade Katumba had said. I think the other challenge that we have is that of us if I saying we have a messiah, we have a messianic type of a leadership in our country. We don't do our things collectively. So you will find that those who we call messiahs will be those who have property. If we then realize then those who don't have can't then lead the processes maybe to challenge because of that messianic type of politics those who have now lived. But then coming to your question, Comrade Obed, I think it's a challenge, it's a tragedy that we have a winner takes it all a type of electoral system. The proportional representation that we have doesn't really amounts to anything. I've seen we only have women quota, that's where we have the proportional representation. We have in the youth quota. It's in the quotas, but then the main people, the main contestants don't enter through the proportional representation type of system. So you will see that the electoral system in our country, in Zimbabwe, favors those we have. I can go, for example, to primary elections that happens. You will see that those who can then contest and win are those we have, because they will buy people beer, they will buy votes, either in primaries and also in the national election. So you will see that it's really troublesome to have that type of electoral system. Those who don't have won't have a chance to contest. But then we have few people who doesn't have. But then when they enter into that public office, they now have a challenge of being whipped into line. If they want to talk about the real issues that are affecting people, the real transformative issues, they might be whipped into line by those who have, because they will be given some tokens there to say, now because we have given you this quota, you don't have to talk much. You just have to eat. You don't have to be a too talkative a person. So I think the electoral system needs to change. We need to depart from the winner takes it all and start having elections at a proportional representation basis.
Okay, thank you so much for that and perception with regards to the electoral system and how the winner takes it all is failing us. I'll come back again to you, Comrade Tatenda. Earlier on, you had spoken to the issue of the impossibilities with regards to the impossibilities with regards to having those who are in the class of the elites, the bourgeois, leading a struggle for the proletariat in a way. But now the question then comes to say, elections is there constructed if we are going to be using them as the vehicle for change. The elections are expensive, and the ordinary masses of our people do not have capacity to fund their own campaigns, and they end up trying to go into an alliance with the bourgeois so that at least they can be able to campaign. And I think in 1999, when the workers came together, tried to say they are forming a party for the working people. Eventually, they needed some ex-roadies, they needed donors and everything. And then, how do you now reconcile this issue of a class struggle vis-a-vis the need to fund the same struggle?
Okay, that is a very important issue, Comrade Obed. Class alliances are not a new thing. Historically, we have seen instances where workers on their own or working people on their own do not have the material needs or means to sustain their struggles, and they've gone into alliances with other classes for them to be able to achieve their own means. So it's not a new thing. That is the first point I want to point out. You have pointed out the issue of the MDC. We have seen a lot of class, a hodgepodge of class interests in the party in the early 2000s. You had commercial white farmers who were aggrieved by the state, and they needed a political voice, and they realized that they needed a mass party. In as much as there is an evident conflict in commercial white farmers or the elite of Rhodesia trying to protect their interests, they were not vain enough to think they can be a critical mass to wage a sustained fight against the ZANU-PF-led regime. So a class arrangement came into place under the MDC. So what lessons can be drawn from these classes, which I would want to then put forward in response to what you have asked? It calls for the organization of our class as working people, that when it becomes inevitable sometimes to get into alliances, we should be one, highly organized in terms of our mobilization, in terms of articulation of our class interests, in terms of our own intervention plans, such that when the marriage of convenience comes to an end, or when people retreat to their class interests, we would have achieved common goals. For example, if you are talking about taking state power, for example, if you do take over, you need to be able to remain with the same class interests which you had and be able to confront your yesteryear partners if they become an obstacle to the change you want. So elections, yes, are necessary in our society. Under bourgeois democracy, there are some of the most effective ways of fighting against a ruling elite or fighting against a regime that is oppressive. So elections, when they come, we have to participate. We have to push for reforms like electoral democracy. We have to push for the least offensive class allies, which we can align with and still retain our identity. So when I say it's limited to use the parliamentary route to achieve what we want, I'm not saying we should totally do away with elections, but we should seek to control them in a very significant way. We should seek to retain our own identity in a very, very principled way. Then, as another thought occurred to me about funding our own struggles, Comrade Obet, it's not always that we have to rely on the capital of our class opponents. The working class, by size, are the largest class. I have seen GoFundMe processes whereby whereby people would say, okay, we have an issue which we want to defend. We need resources. And the only way we can leverage on our numbers is when we run a processes that collect $1, $2. You realize that at the end of the day, you do have sufficient resources to run your campaigns. Look at how trade unions function. Workers individually are not an issue when you look at their class components, the employers. But trade unions can successfully, organize workers' resources, and be able to mount a sustainable fight for the defense of of workers' interests. So I believe it's also time the working class is trained, is made to realize that yes, we do not have capital, but within ourselves, Tikabatana, what we have can be significant to run our struggles and to be able to oil the machinery which we need to use to get the change we want. Tarisa is network my church, Maria Mukando. No one actually takes you through a hard time to pay into that offering basket. But churches are then well run because people have sufficient faith and belief that they can contribute and be able to sustain that which they believe in. So we do have a lot of work to do to make the ordinary person realize that if you have sufficient belief and consciousness into the struggle and the vehicle you are building towards the realization of your class interest, yes, we can fund our own struggles, Comrade Obed. It's possible for citizens to be able to organize their own working people's party, fund it, participate in elections without having to deal with conflicts of class alliances. I hope I
Yeah,
responded to the thing.
you did respond. Indeed, we are not outnumbered. We are simply out organized, and the better way to
Yes.
organize ourselves is that we should all be class conscious, that we have a duty as a class to defend our interests and advance them
Precisely.
against causing came. Now, Comrade Gerald, uh, you mentioned the issue of agency, where you are saying the people have to be fighting on a daily basis, fighting for the things that matter to them. You use I can see you use the issue of water and other examples you gave. But one would then ask you to say, what do you think is militating against the citizen agency in Zimbabwe. We seem to have a citizenry that is not responsive. Right now, Mutodi has been fired as the chairperson of that portfolio committee on budget and finance after exposing corruption by someone from the executive arm of government. He's been fired, but the citizens are so quiet. We have notable examples. We've seen the expose in the gold mafia, serious issues raised there, stinging corruption being raised there, but citizens remain quiet. We have seen thousands of learners dropping out of school. You get the list is almost endless of the things that naturally would have provoked a mass response from the people, but our people remain so quiet. What do you think might have happened to the agents of our people?
Okay, thank you very much, Comrade Obed. I think the greatest challenge that we have, like I alluded to earlier, is that the political landscape is created people who we call messiahs. So we are waiting for a messiah in the name of an individual to tell us that we need to fight. And when we want to organize amongst ourselves alone, the same people who we are waiting for will tell us to wait. So that is the greatest challenge that we have been facing as the citizenry. But then also, if you want to then go, you mentioned the issue of energy, Mtodi, and the corruption allegations that the Pichwenga is alluded to. It now goes back to the politics of our day. You know, with the cases of Mtodi, people say no, but it's an in-house thing. It's a fight for survival in their own political parties. So I think that is another challenge that we have faced. But we haven't done much as citizens. We usually, most of the time, we see youngsters seated in the bridges. We don't educate them. We don't tell them that we have to fight. We leave them. We give them drugs. We leave them to drugs. Because I've seen that for any successful revolution, we need the young people. But our young people right now are battling with drugs. No one is telling them about how they need change. They are there alone. We are not doing anything. We talk with our own age mates. We don't recruit them to the fight. We don't recruit them to the struggle. So I think that has been the greatest challenge that we have faced, of us not recruiting much young people. I don't know, but a lot of people use the word gatekeeping. The elders are gatekeeping. They want to be in the news, they want to be in the press, they want a lot of people are no longer fighting for change, like I mentioned earlier. A lot of people are now fighting for their own stomach. So if the more that a person remains in the news speaking out but not doing action, a lot of people will just say this one is a fighter, but we are not fighting. We need, for us to be fighters, we need to recruit, and we have to recruit new blood. We have to recruit young people into the struggle. If we don't recruit, we'll continue crying. We'll continue waiting for an election day, because for us, we have defined a struggle as an election day, where you go and vote, then you go back home. I saw in the last election how we were organized in saying register to vote. That was the only thing that we were talking about. I think for 3 or so years we were talking about how we wanted the young people to register to vote, but then we didn't even talk about how we were going to defend the vote. Number one. Number two, how that vote was going to change that young person's life, but we just wanted them to use them as electoral things, electoral tools for the elect for the leaders to be elected either in council, into parliament, or into the state house. So we haven't done much in terms of recruiting young people and telling them how important this change struggle is to them.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And Comrade Tatenda, as you come in, we also to respond to the same question of say what happened to the agents. You also want to speak to the issue of the phenomena of the generals here across Africa and even the world where young people are taking the lead, protesting from the streets. Why are we not witnessing the same in Zimbabwe? But generally, what is paralyzing our revolutionary agenda? What is fracturing our unity because we seem to be working in different silos? Then why is it so difficult for the subaltern, the dispossessed, the collective mass of our people to come together, regardless of ZANU-PF, to appreciate that beyond all that we are just one unit, a class of the dispossessed? If you would also add to the issue of agency around those particular dynamics. You are on mute. Let me. Yeah, I've unmuted you.
Okay. Thank you for that. The issue of agency, you correctly put it that right now it has been attacked. Citizens' agents in changing our society. Comrade Gerald touched on some of the issue. I would want to differ a bit that it's not just about young people not being recruited. Recruited into what? The struggle has been protracted, Comrade Obed. And when something has gone on for so long without bearing results, it bewilders those who would want to participate into it. So number one, I would want to squarely put the blame on the serious oppression by ZANU-PF. It has intimidated, it has brutalized our people, it has broken the organized formations of workers, organized formations of citizens under civil society, and made it very, very difficult for anyone to organize any civic participation on governance and democracy issues. That on its own has eroded the confidence from any ordinary person, wanting to be part of, civic participation, either in resisting exploitation or in co-creating solutions for the country. Number two, I would want also to locate the challenge in how we have been culprits ourselves in the opposition politics, in the civil society. Comrade Gerald mentioned something to do about gatekeeping. So we have had over the past 3 decades spaces which had been created, spaces which could organize students, spaces which could organize ordinary citizens, spaces which could organize women, spaces which could organize, workers. These spaces have been modeled, for lack of a better expression, into NGO models, where decision making and ownership is by people who bring resources, not by the people who participate. So it has created a system whereby people do not own their own struggles, have no say in giving direction, cannot demand accountability, cannot demand transparency. So the issue of how the struggle is funded is also gone against the agents in Zimbabwe. If you are going to rely on external or capital from donors to be able to fight for the very basic rights. A few weeks ago, I participated at a public consultation on the Public Service Act. A certain teacher, was talking to one of the artist organizers, asking, do you have bus fare for me to come and speak at a public service bill consultation? And the organizer was saying, so you want me to give you bus fare to come and fight for the issues which are going to ensure that you have a pension, you ensure that you have good working conditions, ensure that your children's future, is set correct. He could not respond to that. So this is just an example of what has gone wrong in how we organize, our fight back strategies. We cannot rely on the funds of donors. We cannot rely on the structure of organizing, which gives, handouts for people to come and speak out against the oppression which they are fighting against. Look at how Chimurenga was fought. Vanamai nana baba wedu would, at great risk, prepare SADSA for people who are carrying guns. That is the role they would play without any expectation of payment, but with the satisfaction that what we are doing will bring about the Zimbabwe which we want. So consciousness has gone down to serious levels where people have to be paid to appreciate that they are in a crisis, to appreciate that they need to do something about that crisis. So we have sustained these models, which will continuously churn out generations of people who would think they are doing someone a favor by fighting oppression. People who would think they need someone to pay for them to be able to stand up against a society which they do not want. So that is the second thing apart from ZANU-PF oppression. The fact that how we are organized and the spaces which we had have been taken over into models which are, utopian in a struggle. You don't need people to fund you to fight for your rights. I would want to stop here for now.
Yeah, obviously, I would have put it back to you that the ZANU-PF dictatorship is not anything new. There is no exceptionalism. Dictatorship is dictatorship, but people are fighting elsewhere. But you can pick that later. Comrade Gerald, but I think you raised critical points there. You raised very critical points, but I just wanted to respond on that one. Was we tend then to meet and agree that this dictatorship is so brutal and give it as a justification of not doing anything. But Comrade Gerald, let's go to the issues that are affecting people now. If you were going to be asked to say, what are the most fundamental issues that we have to deal with as a nation today? Which priority areas would you pick to say the things that can unite us as a people? It's so difficult to unite Zimbabweans. There's always someone saying, "Oh, it's wrong. Don't talk about that one." So beyond political parties, beyond which struggles do you think could unite the people of Zimbabwe today? Comrade Gerald.
Okay, thank you very much, Comrade Obed. I think the first thing that I have to mention is social services. It's really a struggle. Hopefully doesn't have a secondary school. Churu doesn't have a secondary school. I was even surprised that we were mentioning that Sunningdale doesn't have a secondary school. It's the children there goes to Mbari to learn. So you see, we have a challenge of education. But then on education again, the most thing that I've realized, or something that I've noted, is education now has been privatized. It's now expensive, and the people who owns those private schools, most of them are our leaders in public offices. If we look at healthcare, people are dying daily. If you still remember, last year, a singer died whilst asking for a painkiller for him to be treated, to be given a painkiller, but at a general hospital, a painkiller couldn't be located. I've listened to a lot of things, especially from ZANU-PF. They are mentioning that we are building roads, and of course we appreciate that we have built roads, but at what cost? Number one. Number two, is that transformed in changing the bus fares of the ordinary person. The only thing that has changed is the road, but it's not the bus fare. We can go to the water crisis. At first, I thought surely we have a crisis. That's why Chitungisa can't have water at the moment. But when we had that disaster, we saw that it is just the lack of will by the people in public office, because they said we are now giving you water. And I was asking myself, where are they getting the water from when they were saying all the past months we can't provide water? But because now there's a national crisis, a national accident, now we can provide water. So it showed me that it's because we are not fighting. So we have a lot of things that that we can use to further our struggle. The issue of underpayment of workers, it's really a thing that we can also use to come together and say no. The workers need to be paid. Civil servants need to be paid. If the nurses goes on strike, it's not the elites from both political parties who suffer, because they have the money to go and be treated in South Africa, in India, in China. But when the nurses at Parenyatwa goes on strike, it's you and me who will not get medical attention. It's me and you. It's our mothers who die whilst giving birth. So we have a lot of things that can bring us together. You mentioned the issue of the gold mafia. It's the resources that are being looted from us. They should benefit the ordinary person. They should benefit a person in Dotito. They should benefit a person in Kwokwe. Those people, they should, the children, they should have their school fees being paid from that mineral process. I saw yesterday Minister Torerai Moyo mentioning the issue that ARTUs that has been mentioning, I think, for the past 10 to 15 years, saying we need an education equalization fund from the minerals. And they had to acknowledge that yesterday, 15 years later. So it means we have a lot of things that we can use to bring people together to fight. It means from yesterday's statement, it just showed me that it is just the lack of will in those people in the public office, and it can bring us together to say we need you to do this. We need you to restore dignity in our country.
Yeah, thank you so much. Now, when Comrade Gerald brought us back to the issue of class again, from his analysis, it is very clear that the elites will always find a way. When we say the education system is collapsed, they will take their children to learn in Australia, whether they're in ZANU-PF or in opposition. When we say there's no health care, they can construct their own private hospitals. They can go and get in India and in China. So the elites are always cushioned, whether they pretend to be opposing or support, or they are supporting, they are cushioned. Now, the question now comes to us again to say, if we are going to be embarking on a revolutionary path, where do we begin to deal with bringing together the different sectors of our society who are under the same class to come together and really fight as a collective, to understand that no, you can't be chanting slogans supporting people from north of Zamora who are insulated from your own problems. How we then, so we have been complaining about the problems. We are not going to face to say, let's begin now a process of reconstructing as we push back and try to change the lived realities of our people. Where do you think we can start if we want to have a proper united front for all working people working together to change their own material condition?
Yeah. So I liked what Comrade Gerald wrote in his article. He captioned it "Dismantle for you to be able to rebuild." So we dismantle these notions that everyone and anyone can be our class comrade simply because they come into our spaces, without necessarily, having the lived realities of our struggles. They are not our class comrades and cannot be relied on to lead the struggle to achieve what we want. So I would want to support what Gerald has been saying. We need to make people have confidence in fighting for the local reforms. I was in Hopley, I was inspired. When people achieve the realization that a secondary school can be brought to their community because one, they self-organized, no one funded them, they spoke about their crisis, they managed to lobby the responsible people, they went to parliament and presented a petition, and they have sustained a demand and a call for that secondary school. So if a secondary school is to appear in Hopley today, that will give confidence not only to the people in Hopley, but to people elsewhere, that if you come together as the affected people and be able to articulate your problem and be able to speak as one, change can actually come. So we would need to build confidence into communities. I'm working with communities now, and make people realize that nothing for us without us, and none but ourselves can bring about the change we want. So it's an issue of consciousness. We debunk the notion that there will be messiahs who would come and usher us into Canaan, but only our own self-activity can bring about the change we want. And for people to realize it cannot be one sweeping, overwhelming change where we wake up tomorrow with everything changed. But when we fight these small struggles and say we need water in Stungwiza, we organize with residents organizations, and at the end of the day we have water in Stungwiza. That builds confidence to ask for key and higher questions of how our society is run. So I would want to really buttress the point by Comrade Gerald that we need to debunk no messiah is coming to save us as Zimbabweans. And we have the capacity to self-organize. We have the capacity to demand. We have the capacity to leverage on our numbers. We have the consciousness to know what is proclaimed in the Constitution and be able to demand those things so that we can, in the broader sense, change the society, one step at a time. Then I would also want to speak about previous efforts. There was a movement around the People's Charter sometime, a movement around the Citizens Manifesto, people, working towards a national vision. Those are noble efforts. People need to have a shared vision of the kind of Zimbabwe you want. So at all levels of our social organizing, we should have deliberate efforts of making people speak and define the Zimbabwe that they want. You realize that it will emerge as one broad vision because we are dealing with the same issues of saying we are against, Ziganandas. We are against a system that protects a few at the expense of the majority. We are against a system that denies, our students the chance to progress with education. We are against a system that underpays workers. So in that effort, you then come up with a shared vision of a society that which you would want to achieve. It then makes it also easier for people to make the necessary sacrifice, because if you share a vision, you don't need to be worrying about, okay, how do we bring people to present a petition in parliament? Vanoita mudeme because the vision is shared. All right, taita articulation strategy yedu ndeyekuti tiendese parliament. People will contribute, people will go, and we will not have stagnation where people will say we are waiting for a donor to come and take us from point A to point B.
Thank you so much, Comrade Tenda. You shared a brilliant vision there. Now, it took you a moment to go to Hopley to discuss with them and share this particular vision. And then one would argue to say if we are going to use that route, it may take decades before we even share this vision with the rest of the country. But if we were going to want to ensure that this vision spreads fast, what big steps, if you have any, that you think we can be able to embark on to ensure that this vision is shared amongst the majority of our people, and then there's self-activity across the country, as you term it.
Yes, very, very important question. We leverage on technology. Right now, we are on a platform that brings this conversation to several people, and people can contribute, agree or disagree with what we are saying in a moment. So we leverage on, technology. Most people have WhatsApp. Most people have smartphones. So we bring these conversations as much as possible to platforms where people can access, and we are also not substituting the agents of these people. Community organizing would encourage people in their own localities to see the success and the manner in which one community achieved, a victory. Emulate it in that area. I like what Choose is doing with their PT Parents Teachers Association, drive. You deliberately go out there, you help parents self-organize, you leave them to continue with their specific struggle in that community, and within a short space of time you have whole voices of community based parents speaking on the issue of education. It ceases to be a small issue between teachers organized under tools, but it becomes a shared issue in the communities where the actual parents are saying, yes, this is the crisis we are having, and yes, this is the way forward we need to adopt.
Thank you so much. Comrade Gerald, you also then spoke of the issue of the ballot, but you can also tie into what Tatenda said, but then also extend to the issue of the ballot, which you spoke to say definitely at the pinnacle of trying to seek change, you might then need to cast a ballot, but not it as the only way to deliver change. But given our current context, what do you think should be done to make the ballot credible? So you can also then share your own party to change, but also then including the issue of the ballot. We've held the contested elections over years. In 2028, another contested outcome. What can be done to improve credibility for electoral processes? What can be done between now and 2028? But you can also share other ideas on how to push towards change outside the ballot box.
Thank you very much. I think the issue of the ballot I've mentioned, and there's been a lot of talk about electoral reforms. I think since I was a young person who couldn't vote, but those electoral reforms have not come. Why? Because they are only talked about when we are about to go to an election. So we need to, as a citizen, to say now we demand that we have electoral reforms. And what are the electoral reforms that we want? I mentioned the abolition of the winner takes it all type of electoral system, which excludes the minority groups. So I think that is something that we need to focus on. But also we should also know that like what Comrade Atenda said, that will not get the holistic changes that we want. We'll get changes bit by bit. I think I mentioned it in the article that changes is not an event, because people will say we have been fighting since 2000, since 1980, since 1890. We haven't seen a significant change in our lives. So people should understand that change is not an event that happens only once. Change happens going bit by bit, step by step. We need to change. We need to have like Comrade Tatenda was saying, we need to have our own poor people's manifesto. We need to craft our own problems and how we think we can deal with them. We have issue of clean water. Yesterday, or the day before yesterday, I saw the council in Harare celebrating cars. I don't know what it is with the Zimbabweans and cars, but they were celebrating cars to say we will now deliver clean water because we now have cars. I don't know if they are going to use those cars to go door to door to deliver water, but that's another thing that we have to really think about and come up again with our own solutions on how we can have clean water or demand clean water, how we can have a functional healthcare system that is different to the one that we have. So I think, in a nutshell, of course, we have to wait for an election, but an election is an event. An election is a one-day thing. Of course, some people argue that it's not one day because we have the time that we have to prepare going to rallies. But if you have ever seen economy, that's the only time that we hear how political parties wants to change the economy into a viable economy, and it's put into a 5-year plan, and not into something that they will do. Then after 5 years, they will say we failed, but they will give us another model to say we are going to do this. But if we don't think about how we want our economy to function now, then whatever we are doing will not be a result. So we have to go to election, but first we have to demand the reforms to be instituted, and one of those reforms should be about abolishing the first past the post electoral system.
Thank you so much. You raise fundamental issues there with the need for reforms, and without reforms, our elections won't be credible, which is very important. Now, I was going to put this question to Tatenda, but I realized that he is left now. So I'll put it to you. You can tie it down with your final word to our viewers. But I want to ask you on the tender system in Zimbabwe, which is breeding massive corruption. What's your honest opinion about the tender system and what can be an alternative? Because the bulk of the corruption that we discuss in Zimbabwe is through that particular tender system. Even with the cars that you are raising about Harare City Council, they are coming as part of a tender package. But it's about water, but we didn't see any water pipe that was procured. We saw cars, but it's part of a tender package. What's your view about Zimbabwe's tendering system?
So thank you very much for bringing that important question. So the tender system, we have said it since time immemorial that it doesn't work for us. It helps only the ruling elites. If you want a tender, you have to be in proximity to the leadership of the day. If you want a tender, the tender procedures are designed in a way that they benefit those who are near power. I believe that we have to build our institution into being stronger. I don't believe that we should have tenders, but rather the state should be able to capacitate itself into doing the things that we are hearing that, for example, Chivayo being given the Gwanda solar project. The state should have done it on its own. These cars that you are talking about, the Harare City Council is a very big budget. which can support the issues to do with water. But because the people at the helm there, they want a kickback, a cutback. They want to have something. They have to award tenders to certain individuals. I saw the issue of Gwanda solar project by Wikneo Chivai. Chivai's company Intratech was not the first, it was the second on the tender awarding procedures, but it was given the tender because Chivayo is in proximity with the first family. So it's something that we have to fight. We need a state that can capacitate itself to do these things that we are giving these thieves, that we are giving these Ganandas to do this. If a state is functional, it can do all these things. Remember, we had DDF, which would construct roads, but now you would hear that it's now Tagwire who is now doing roads. What happened to DDF? What happened to Zinga? We need to capacitate those institutions to become strong so that we can then do away with tenders and tender procedures that's being awarded.
Thank you so much, Comrade Gerald. Thanks, Comrade Tatenda, in absentia. It was great having a conversation on change here on the True Patriot podcast. We focus on an important issue here with Comrade Gerald's closing on the change that he desires to see with regards to our procurement systems, where he insists that we should scrap the tender system and build state capacity to deliver basic services. In that process, we also create jobs by having a state that can do massive public works. You create jobs for millions who are out of employment. We want to see our state constructing roads. It is possible because the state used to construct roads without needing fossil to construct roads. We want to see the state running its own public water systems. We don't need Farajeri to buy water meters. York Road doesn't produce water meters. Why do we need Farajeri when we need water meters? We should be able to engage the suppliers, even if they're foreigners, and they supply directly to our city council. And we should have even import the technology, then the technology becomes part of our city council, so that the maintenance itself is also done internally, and in future we can be able to produce these resources, including water chemicals themselves. We should be able to produce them. So what we need is to strengthen state capacity. The Rhodesian state at some point was so efficient, it could run RISCO, which is ZISCO, which later collapsed. It would run a transport network that was solid. It was the first to blend. So it was to blend with petrol, with ethanol. It was a competent state infrastructure, but only serving a minority. And we are saying, what is stopping us from building a competent state that can deliver development for the people? Why should we spend money on individuals like Chivayo and Tagwire, not spending the money on building a strong bureaucracy that can deliver genuine development for people? But this discussion really also centered around the world change process, where we agreed that we need to build class consciousness among the working class. You are a peasant, whether you support ZANU-PF or you support the opposition, you remain a peasant. And issues that affect peasants are the same. They come to you as a peasant, not because you wear Mnangagwa's regalia or Chamisa's regalia. You are confronted with the same poverty in the peri-urban of Zimbabwe. If you are in Hopley, whether ZANU-PF or CCC, and you are in the same class as a citizen, why don't you come together, build class consciousness, act together as a people to confront access to education, confront access to healthcare, confront access to water? You do not need to get a messiah to deliver this change for you. You can't be begging it separately. You have to work together as a class and push for what you believe in. And also the issue of also going into class collaborations, we should only collaborate with the other classes with the other class if we have our own class agenda as working people, and we have our own class program on the nature of the change we want to see. So the challenge is to you as a citizen to say, you should not wait for change to come through a ballot box. The change begins with you beginning to organize your community today. We are calling upon you to begin organizing community cells that discusses the community problems, agree on the solutions that you desire to see, and start working on it today. Then we can collaborate nationally through our different community cells and begin a national movement for the working people who are determined to change the conditions of living, to stop the corruption that we are seeing from Zigananda, to ensure that the national budget prioritizes our social services, to ensure that neoliberalism is removed from being a policy program for our nation. Thank you so much, viewers, for being part of the conversation. Until next week, this is True Patriot Podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, to share the link with others so that they can also be part of these conversations. Thank you again to our
Kuchema